So Spectral plugins has, unfortunately, I guess, decided to close their doors, and they're now making their three flagship plugins free. So we are going to do our little keep or trash series where I go through the three of them and determine if it's something I would keep or if it's something that I would never use and therefore just kind of, throw into the trash bin and not have it in my plugin collection. I'll tell you right now, all three of these are actually keeps for me. These are very high quality, high performance, modern plugins. Whereas with our last two series, these were very much legacy plugins where the companies kind of have newer things on offer and therefore just kind of made their really old ones free if people wanted to use them. This is a very kind of sad situation in the sense that I've already tried out these three plugins after downloading them, and they're all very good. And I just really didn't know anything about them until now. So definitely a shame that this company is having to shut down. But we'll go through these three, listen to them, test them out a little bit, play with them, and I'll let you know my overall feelings and opinions on each of them. So, depending on what style or type of music you make or the type of producer you are, you can make a decision maybe if you want to download these or if you just want to pass on it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So let's start with what's debatably the easiest plugin to work with, but extremely powerful and very well thought out from the user standpoint. And that is really important to me on whether or not I'm going to keep or trash a free plugin. So the sound quality is obviously the most important thing, but also the layout, the interface, and just how easy it is to work with is equally as important, because if it's something that's a pain in the butt to work with, unless it sounds just so amazing that you can't live without it, I'm probably not going to pull to it. And the best example of that is stuff like the Acoustica audio plugins. Sometimes they sound absolutely amazing, but to work with them is just more trouble than it's worth for me personally. Now, this really well thought out. Pretty much everything you can do and accomplish in this, you could accomplish with your internal tools. Definitely true in Bitwig. We could do pretty much all of these things, but the amount of time it would take us to do that, the number of processors, it would be probably 6, 7 times the amount of time. Whereas with this, it's all in one package. So the first thing is that we do have a bunch of presets, which I always appreciate when it comes to working with any plugin. And then we have our settings, and the one setting you might just be changing is the size of the interface. So you can see I've brought that up. If you hit the question mark, that is going to take you to the manual. And for this one, I don't think you need the manual, but it is nice to just have that regardless, in case you do have a question about something, you'll be able to find the answer pretty quick. And I should have mentioned at the beginning of the video, to download these plugins, you just type in your email address and you instantly get access to those downloads. So you don't have to confirm your email, you don't have to do any other steps, you don't have to create an account. And that is also very much appreciated in this world of downloading free plugins. So they were very nice and kind about everything, especially giving it to everybody for free. It's not like they're just trying to steal some data on the way out the door, which other companies would definitely do. All right, enough of that talking. Let's actually look at and explore the plugin. So in this first example, I'm only going to use single. So I'm not going to touch multi. And then we'll do a couple examples with multi. But the first thing that we have is a threshold control. So we can do some limiting here or soft clipping, and then we're not going to exceed that on the way out. So you can see right now our signal is peaking out at minus 10.2. Let's bring this down to around minus 12. And then that means that we are going to be getting a couple dB of either soft clipping or limiting depending on the setting. And when we go a little bit more extreme with this, you'll really be able to hear the sonic differences. So for this signal, soft clip is going to sound a little bit better if we want a little more brightness preserved, which I do. So I'm going to bring that back to about minus 12. Now, notice when we watch our meters, this is never going to exceed minus 12 now, no matter what else we do, I guess, except for output gain. Okay, so let's say that I want to enhance the transient on this. I can do that. Or if I want to de-emphasize it, I can do that as well. Now, when we start to go lower on this, let's watch our peaking. You'll see that we are now coming out below that threshold that we've set up. So I'm going to enhance this transient in this example just a little bit. And then we can play with tail, which is, of course, the second half of the signal. So do we want to cut that off earlier? Basically turn it into a hi-hat, or do we want to enhance it? Okay, so we can hear what that's doing there. Let's go all the way up. So it's completely reshaped the sound now from where we started. So let's imagine that in this situation, we wanted to leave the transient alone, and we just wanted to cut back the tail just a tiny bit. And maybe we'll enhance the transient just a little, since that is the point of the plugin. We then have a couple of other knobs that we can use to try to, depending on what we've done with manipulating the signal, kind of control the frequency response of it a little bit, or even the dynamics. So the first thing we have is NYC. So let's consult the manual for NYC, which is going to be a type of compression. So let's see if we can find that here quickly. Adjust level of parallel compression. 100% of this knob means the output signal is 50% uncompressed and 50% fully compressed. And they don't tell us anything else about those settings or anything, so we don't have to worry about it. So it's just a question of, does it sound good or not? Oh boy. We can hear how aggressive that is. So in this case, we might just want to tickle that a tiny, tiny bit because it's having a big difference on the sound. Let's go right there. And of course, we also do have a mix control. So if we really pushed this in, which is really not kind of almost counteracting the transient control we're trying to do, we could mix in a portion of that. And do something like that for body. So I think I want to go mix 100%, and I'm going to use just, let's put this to about 10. And even that might be too much. So I'm thinking, let's cut down on the tail even more, given what we're doing with the compression. Yep, I like that a lot. And then we have two more controls. So we have a presence control and an air control. And let's just read what the manual is telling us about those two controls as well. So for presence, adjust presence of a signal with a very clear and smooth result. Air, adjust brightness of a signal and brings out its details in very high frequencies. So we can probably think about the air band as being like 12K and up, and probably the presence band like 5K and up. Again, they don't list that on here, so you're just going to use your ear. So let's go ahead and adjust the presence band and turn it back on. Oh, wow. Even a little bit goes a really long way. And this is probably going to become more valuable and useful when we go multi-band. Okay, so here was our starting. And here's our ending. And then obviously we could kind of do something like the opposite too and just see what result we get. So we're going to really kill that transient. This is going to be more of like a special effect. Yeah, let's do a special effect. So we almost created like a white noise here. And then let's just bring in like a tiny bit of this on the mix. So that gives you an idea of how you can work with this thing in both kind of a practical way and then also in more of a creative way if you really wanted to do that. Next, we have a little bit of a drum beat going. And this would be a good chance to show off like the multi-band functionalities of this. And so what I'm going to do in this example is I'm only going to do transient shaping on the mid band. So I'm going to turn multi on, and then what I want to do here is kind of solo out the mid band and find the frequency range that I want to adjust the transients on. And I think that is pretty good right there. Now, all of these settings down here and the input and the output, these are global, along with like setting the threshold here. The thing that will change band to band is the transient and the tail settings. So just keep that in mind when you're working with it. So this is kind of extreme. But let's imagine that that's what I wanted to do there on the mid band. Notice when I go to the low band and to the high band, those settings reset. So let's imagine I want to increase the tail here, just to do something kind of wonky. And maybe I want to bring these transients down for some reason. Okay, we can hear that difference there. Now, you can hear that it sounds like the low band is now dominating and it's a little bit muddy. So I can probably come back in with the presence and the air to try to save that, and also maybe do a little bit of soft clipping, which is probably going to bring out those highs a little bit more. And this is global. Yep. And maybe just the slightest on that. And obviously, we really wouldn't want the tail being that long. And there you go. And so obviously this could be used in very creative ways as well. And if for some reason you've brought in a drum loop and you just don't want the low end at all, then let me go mix 100% on this. There we go. I was trying to figure out how to have that not play. But you can do something like this and just cut out the low band completely. So let's say you already have a kick drum and now you're just trying to use this for percussion. You could do that, or you could obviously apply EQ as well. So that is a look at using multi-band on a drum loop. And then maybe we'll just do this one more time on some kind of a synth loop or something and just do something creative with it. All right, so I have this little song starter I've brought in. And maybe we can do something really, really creative. So we're going to bring this on. We're going to turn it to multi. And I'm just going to kind of go crazy with it and do some wild stuff and see what we can come up with. just to recreate it. And I have no idea how this is going to end up coming out. Okay. Gain some distortion, which I'm okay with. Okay. So let's hear it just with all of that nonsense that we've done. And now we can start to use the other options too. Oh, that's cool. I like this. So here is where we started. And here's where we finished. And let's check to see if we've added any gain. Nope. And then obviously there's still tons of stuff we'd have to do to try to suit that out. But that's one way to take a sample and just completely alter it and Frankenstein it and then set yourself up to do something like, I don't know, I'm just going to grab a preset out of this thing. So that gives you an idea just very quickly how, we use that one plugin to really manipulate and change this, gave us an idea to add something else on, and then you can just see how like an idea or a song can take shape. So bottom line, definitely a keep. And the only complaint I would have personally is I would like to be able to then change the final kind of gain on the three bands like individually. I would like to have that control, but that's a very small complaint. I think otherwise this thing is amazing and can save you a ton of time versus trying to recreate and do these exact things I did with just your internal tools. Definitely doable, probably would take you 10 times as long. The second plugin we'll look at is the OCS 45. And of the three Spectral plugins, this is the one that I would probably be most likely to trash if I haven't used it at all in a month's time, which I think is very possible. So really, what this is going to come down to are these four different cassette type settings and whether or not they do something special or something very like specific to the sound that you're going for. Now we're going to start by just kind of going through the different modules and walking through the plugin, but to me, this is kind of the thing that makes this unique. The other stuff, in my opinion, isn't really that special. Now, when you come down here to the contextual menu, you have the option to turn oversampling on. You can see I'm in dark mode. We can change the size, or we can get to the manual. And the one thing I want to go through in the manual are just the four different types of cassette tapes. So the first one, ferrite cassette. Normal cassettes were historically the first, the most common, and the least expensive. They dominated the pre-recorded cassette market. The second one, chromium, higher signal to noise ratio, has been historically known as chromium dioxide tape or simply chrome tape. High frequency response has been increased. The third one, FECR cassette, 1973, double layer ferrochrome tapes, advertised as the best of both worlds, combining good low frequency with good treble performance. And unfortunately, the idea failed to attract followers. And then the fourth one, metal cassette, 1979, more bassy and include louder high frequencies. So that's probably all you need to know. And all the other stuff we can very easily go through together. So what I've done here is I've brought in a preset. And I've kind of turned off all of the LFOs. I turned off this random modulator and I turned off the chorus because it's going to be useful then when we go and work with the plugin. So I'm just going to bring the plugin on and I'm going to turn off the cassette. I'm going to turn off the distortion, turn off the dropouts, turn off the noise. And so that means we're now just working with the wow and the flutter. And both of these involve pitch variations. Wow is typically over a longer period of time, and flutter is like variation over a much shorter period of time. And we can combine those and they'll be visualized here on this wobble display. So let's start with the wow. And what really should be happening, and I'm not sure how much it's happening here, is the speed should kind of be varying. That's sort of what you expect with the wow effect, but this seems to be kind of consistent. Let's make it really fast. You might then be able to hear. Yeah, I can't really hear a ton of variation in that rate, which is what you would normally be expecting, at least me personally. And then when we bring in the flutter, we'll kind of see what that's doing in between each of these peaks and troughs. So if I was trying to introduce some wow and flutter, I might do something a little bit more like this and just bring it down a little bit more. Or potentially what you can do is you could increase the depth and then take the global dry wet and bring that down, and it will give you a nice, interesting sound. Now, there's a lot of other plugins that do the wow flutter thing, and this is a free one from, I think it's Yum Audio. And if I was going to introduce like a wow and a flutter, I would probably use this instead. Because you can hear and sometimes see the variation that gets brought in. And then we have kind of different instability types, whether we want to be more jittery or if we want to be slower on that variation. And so let me just crank it all the way up and just do something like... Because something like that is just a little bit more pleasing to me. And I think for me, again, just my taste, that's my preference. If we're using like another free plugin, there's obviously paid plugins that kind of do the same thing and go deeper. So that's what we have with the wow and the flutter. And let's just bring our depths back way down. And then let's move over to the noise. So we have these different noise types, and the easiest way to actually hear this is to crank this up and then just very slightly touch a key, because it will drop out eventually. Or I believe it should drop out eventually. Yeah, but the way you can hear the differences is to do something like... So you can easily just hear those differences. So this is the one that's kind of like most pleasing and flattering to the sound. So we can probably just bring in a little bit of this, make it barely noticeable, but it will beef up the signal a little bit. I have to do more so you can hear it. There you go. And then the dropout here, if this is on, when we turn dropouts on and we bring up an amount, it also means that the noise will drop out with it when the dropout occurs. If we have that turned off, that won't be the case. So we'll be able to hear this really obviously if I do this and crank up the volume on the noise. So you can hear that the noise cuts out too. If that's off, it's just going to continue. So dropouts, again, I don't really know how much you're going to want to use something like that for most signals. Again, maybe if you're doing a little bit or doing like a 50-50 on here, it might be good. I'm never a fan of this, though, because it just never really sounds natural. So this isn't just a knock on this plugin. This is just in general. To me, it's usually distracting, but maybe we can get it to work well if we do a mix in. So yeah, that's at least pretty subtle. And then we also have a distortion that we can bring in, and we have the different modes on the distortion, as well as a tonal control and a dry wet. And I think with these, again, a little bit goes a long way. The tube and the soft clip to me, I think, are the ones that sound good, but it obviously depends on the source material. So we're just using this pad sound here, and depending on what you use, that will very much determine what you want to do. The downsample one, let's use that first. And to me, it's really not pleasing. I'm not sure where you're going to use that one, so I just wanted to show that first. So if we take it out, and then we bring it in, and then we actually get to what the plugin is all about, the different cassette simulations. So how deep they've gone with this, I don't know. Sometimes it's really just like an EQ curve. That may be the case of what's going on here. I don't want to make any assumption one way or the other, but let's just go ahead and bring this on. You can hear how that's degrading the signal. So to my ear, I think I like this third one. Maybe actually the fourth one. Yeah. And then you also have the option to kind of mono out the signal. But note that that's kind of global and separate to the dry wet. So let's imagine we are doing something like this. And even then, it's still like too much of the plugin. So that gives you an idea of how you might work with this thing if you were working with it raw. Now, again, in my opinion, I don't really know if I feel like this is the greatest thing in the world, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring on a few samples and probably use a few presets so that we can actually just kind of hear this thing in more of like a real context or setting, like where you have a purpose for it, right? So if you have like a super clean drum loop or something like that, and you want to bring on a preset to see if it's flattering, there's just so many other plugins that kind of do this general idea. And the other thing I guess I'll do quickly before we go to the different sample types is I want to bring this on and I just want to work with the cassette. Like, just get that effect, forget everything else, and let's just focus on what these cassettes will do. Hear the low end. And yeah, like maybe that would work well, right? Like you can try it out and see if it's flattering for what you're going for. If it is, great. Obviously if it's not, you would leave it out. So I've brought on a few different sounds, and that way we can just kind of jump through some of these presets to hear if we like this effect overall or not. That's a good way to kind of determine if this is a keep or trash for you, is just doing what I'm about to do here. So there's our signal. It's already a mono signal. And that's a pretty good tape effect. And let's just jump to the next category. So yeah, you get an idea there. Let's go into medium. And that's a pretty cool, hardcore specialty effect. All right, so that's what it sounds like on a guitar loop. Next, let's go ahead onto this vocal part.
First page singing under the moon. You and me together, it felt so good. But then you made me feel blue when you ran away with somebody new. First page singing under the moon. You and me together, it felt so good. But then you made me feel blue when you ran away with somebody new. First page singing under the moon. You and me together, it felt so good. But then you made me feel blue when you ran away with somebody new. Look, you're at my door, saying I look nice. Can't you see I'm happy now? I don't miss your lies. I've been moving on, I've been cold as ice, and I don't need nobody else to live in paradise. I was a film you. First page singing under the moon. You and me together, it felt so good. But then you made me feel blue when you ran away with somebody new.
Not bad.
Look, you're at my door, saying I look nice. Can't you see I'm happy now? I don't miss your lies. I've been moving on, I've been cold out.
I just really hate the down sample effect.
First page singing under the moon. You and me together, it felt so.
And finally, let's bring this on to some drums. Interesting. Okay. So there you go. That's a look at the OCS 45 cassette simulation. I'm kind of on the fence about this one. It's the one where I'm going to have to see over time if I actually pull to it to get that kind of tonal shaping, or if I just rely on something like the RC20, which tends to be more of the popular go-to for kind of getting these sorts of effects, just out the gate. So yeah, just wanted to throw that in quickly as kind of an example of another plugin that's doing stuff like this. These are really just kind of designed to be coloration plugins, right? And so when you bring in these raw samples, you throw this on for a little bit of spice. And finally, we have Spacer, and this one is going to be great for anybody who is a sound designer or even a music producer who maybe is lacking a convolution reverb or like a grain reverb in their arsenal, or a grain delay. You could just use that individual module, to kind of enhance your stock effects that come with your plugin. So this is what the interface looks like here, and we have all of these different modules that we can turn on or off as we see fit. We can rearrange the first 5 into whatever order we want to put those. And then we have a final kind of output where we have utilities that we can work with. And then we also have a chorus effect that we can work with. So each of these modules is pretty similar. If you see 3 dots, it means you can bring up some additional settings that you don't get by default because this is just the display. And then each of them also has an EQ that you can use for tweaking, which is going to be very useful when we listen to some of these effects, because if it's taking away all of your high end or if it's really enhancing the low end, you can try to kind of reshape the signal by using these 2 different independent bands you have in each module. And then of course there's also like the randomization that you can do. This is randomization globally across the plugin, or you can go in and you can lock a particular one and then throw the dice and we see that that one's not moving, or just randomize individual ones, right? So we can do that for the various modules there. In terms of the settings, you'll find that here, and this is going to take you to the quick start guide. This is going to take you to the actual manual, and the actual manual really isn't that long if you want to go through and read that. But I thought what we would go ahead and do here to start this out is just very quickly take a listen to the different modules before we go in and like experiment with some presets. So if you are working with this thing from scratch, the first thing I'd probably recommend you do is you just turn off all of the different modules. And here's our signal. All right, we got that like so. And the first thing that we have here is just a digital reverb. And I'll just put it to 100% so we can hear it. So you can hear with this one, and in this case, damp is having kind of very little effect because it's a very low signal coming through. We'd probably want to go into the EQ and maybe shelve out a little bit of the low end and go to the high end and actually bring some of this up. You could even do something interesting with that if you want to modulate it. So that's just your digital reverb there. Then we also have a convolution reverb, which a lot of DAWs don't come with these right out of the bat, or right out of the gate, I should say. And you can see that we have 3 different types: halls, rooms, and then synthetics. So definitely worth going in here and experimenting, because there's a lot of different convolutions that they have, and they might be a lot of fun to work with. It's also worth noting that there are presets inside of each of these if you want to just go and explore them that way. Or again, you can just throw the dice and it helps to turn it on. And there were a couple of interesting presets I remember looking at on here. So, for example, they have something called Sinkhole. Let's take a listen to this. And sometimes it can be fun to play with these settings. Like, listen to what that's done to the low end. I want it longer. Getting this crazy subby thing in here. So again, you can imagine how this could be used for sound design. I'm not going to go through and go any deeper than this at this point, but again, you can definitely come through here and experiment with the different convolutions, or just at the top level, the different presets that they have in here. Let's try Frozen Hall. It's kind of cool. I like that. Okay, the next thing we have is a grain reverb. And this will be unique if you've never worked with one of these before, but this is a way that we can really manipulate a signal like this. And just imagine modulating stuff like this. I'm going to be really aggressive here for a second. And we can always hit the panic button if we need to. Okay, so let's just look at a couple of these presets, because I love grain reverbs for sound design. Just so much fun. Or something like that. And then we could modulate something like feedback. I want to bring this way down. Okay, so that's the grain reverb. I could sit there and play with that for a long time. The next thing we have is just kind of a standard delay. And for that, I am going to bring this on to just a lead sound here. Just in the default settings. I thought I turned the reverb off on this thing. Sometimes I get confused as to what's open and what's not. The one thing I don't necessarily love about these plugins is there's no like just quick global bypass as far as I know. And I think I did turn the reverb off on this, so yeah. There There we go. So let's turn on just the standard delay. And we have a ping pong option. And I mean, the only really sort of creative thing we can probably do with this is if we go into time mode. To do stuff like that, and then maybe we'll go in here and just like really narrow out the range. And I'm just trying to show you what you could do creatively. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So you could probably run this first and then turn on the convolution and grab something random out of that. Or maybe the grain would be the more interesting one to actually use. Let's turn the grain reverb on and give us the wildest thing that they've got on here. Space bathroom. All right. And instant wild effects. And if you were smart, you would have these things mapped to some knobs, you would record, and you'd have yourself some special effects right there. And then the final one we have is the grain delay. And we could play with this on either one because it's a more unique sort of delay. Let's use time so we can do something wonky. And let me actually use this on this one and just go through some of the presets because that will give you a better idea of what you can do with a grain delay versus me just trying to play in notes on it. So there you go. That gives you an idea with the grain delay. It's one you just basically play around with to see if you can find something really cool and unique with. And then finally, what we have are just kind of our globals. So let's go ahead and start with the chorus. Let me just go all the way up so we can hear it. This may not be the best signal in the world to use this on. But when I was experimenting with different sounds earlier, it's not a bad sounding chorus. And then we also have some utilities. So a presence control. An air control. Which again, not having the biggest impact on this sound, we'll be able to hear this more on something more full frequency. And then there's also a dimension expander, a global kind of age setting, which I think is just going to decrease the high frequencies and increase the low frequencies. Stereo control, and also we can kind of do a little Haas effecty thing if we want to do that here. Offset the left or the right channel. And this is just using the chorus and the utilities, and it's going to make a big difference. Okay, so that gives you an idea on how you can work with this. And now what we're going to do is, again, bring on a few samples, probably like full music loop type samples or like song starters, maybe also a drum loop, and just kind of go a little bit wild with the randomizer and playing around with some of the presets. All right, so we've brought on some samples, and what we're going to do is we're just going to use, I think, some of the presets so we can kind of hear what exactly this thing is capable of. So here's our first little song starter. And let's bring in Spacer. Throw the dice a couple times. Oh yeah. And you'll notice when you throw the dice, it is going to change everything, but it's not necessarily going to turn some of these on or off. So just keep that in mind when you're going through. Here's just an adding of dimension. That actually does something pretty cool. Let's find something wild. Let's do Eye of the Storm. Oh, yeah. So imagine just bringing this in like at the end of just to be cool for a DJ set. That was really cool too. Oh man, I wish I was recording that. That was well, I am recording it, but as an audio sample. All right, let's go on to this one here. Bathroomizer. Make it sound like you're in a bathroom. That would be interesting on the vocal we have coming up. Of course, you don't have to go 100% either. That's cool. So yep, another really cool one. Next we have a drum loop. And it's standalone. It sounds kind of cool if that's what you're going for. Bundled sticks. Whoa. Ooh, this is nice. Love what the grain delay is doing on this. So yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be up to you to experiment. Obviously, just bringing on some presets, though, you can see we can get some cool stuff. And finally, we have this bathroom. Or not bathroom, this vocal, but I wanted to bring on the bathroom preset.
Close your eyes. Trust me now.
Where's the bathroom? There we go.
Take some time. And we can walk the line. You can follow my eyes. You can follow my eyes.
Ooh, yeah.
I'll hold you. Close your eyes. Trust me now. Take some time.
That's the one with the pitch. Let's go up to 12.
And we can walk the line. You can follow my eyes. You can follow my eyes. I'll hold you. Close your eyes. Trust me now. Take some time. And we can walk the line. You can follow my eyes. You can follow my eyes. I'll hold you. Close your eyes. Trust me now. Take some time. And we can walk the line. You can follow my eyes. You can follow my eyes. I'll hold you. Close your eyes. Trust me now. Take some time. And we can walk the line. You can follow my eyes. You can follow my eyes. I'll hold you. Close your eyes. Trust me now. Take some time. And we can walk the line. You can follow my eyes. You can follow my eyes. I'll hold you. Close your eyes. Trust me now. Close your eyes. Trust me now. take some time and we can walk the line. You can fall in my arms. You can fall in my arms.
And so I let that play out longer than I probably should, but I just want to give an example of something that's very much a creative effect, but you can see what you could do with it. Like that effect could actually probably be used in a very, very subtle way on an actual like pop vocal. Of course, normally you're going to use this as more of like a sound design tool, but you might just like the way the reverb sounds or the way the grain delay sounds or using the chorus and the utilities. So this is definitely a keeper for me. And of course, you could combine all of these effects together to really do some special things. So, thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, just go ahead and drop those down below. Thank you.